Have you ever felt your chest tighten when you bought something just for yourself, even though you could afford it? Have you ever kept a broken toaster in the garage because you might need it someday? Or stared at a medical bill on the kitchen table, afraid to open it, as if the envelope itself could change your future? If these moments feel familiar, you may be carrying something older than debt. You may be carrying the invisible scars of a childhood shaped by poverty. We usually talk about poverty like it's a math problem, income in, expenses out. But psychology tells a different story. Poverty is not only a lack of money, it is a psychological environment, an atmosphere of constant uncertainty, quiet shame, and waiting for the next thing to go wrong. It teaches a child not how to budget, but how to survive. In homes where rent was never certain, where arguments lived in the walls, a young nervous system learns one rule: stay alert. The brain becomes a smoke detector that never turns off. Even decades later, after the degree, the stable job, the house with a backyard, that alarm can still wake you at 3 a.m, whispering, "This can all disappear." Many adults believe they're simply bad with money or too anxious. But what if those reactions are not flaws? What if they are memories, old survival strategies still running in the background? Today we're going to look at poverty not as a number, but as a force that shapes identity, relationships, and the way your brain understands safety. Because healing doesn't begin with earning more. It begins with understanding what that younger version of you was forced to learn. Poverty in America doesn't always look like empty plates. Often it looks like a working family with 2 cars in the driveway and a refrigerator that is almost full, yet one emergency away from collapse. Here, poverty wears many disguises. It is the mother choosing between insulin and rent, the student carrying a degree that feels more like a debt sentence, the delivery driver refreshing an app at midnight, hoping for one more ride to cover tomorrow's groceries. It is the quiet math of paycheck to paycheck, where a single car repair can rewrite an entire year. We grow up hearing that America is the land of second chances, that hard work guarantees safety, but millions discover a different rulebook. Wages rise slower than rent, medical bills arrive like uninvited storms, entire neighborhoods become food deserts, where the closest fresh vegetables are a bus ride away. Poverty here is not always about laziness. Often it is about systems that move faster than human effort. And children feel this long before they understand economics. They notice the free lunch line at school. They learn to translate their parents' silence after opening the mailbox. They sense the difference between families who plan vacations and families who plan survival. This context matters because the American version of poverty is often psychological before it is visible. You can look stable on the outside and still live with a mind trained for scarcity, checking prices before dreams, measuring love by its cost, treating rest like a luxury you haven't earned. To understand the adult you became, we first have to understand the country that raised you. When a child grows up in financial uncertainty, the brain treats poverty the same way it would treat a storm or a predator, not as an inconvenience, but as a threat to survival. Deep inside the brain sits the amygdala, the body's alarm system. Its job is simple: detect danger and keep you alive. In homes where money is unstable, where voices rise about rent, where cupboards thin out at the end of the month, that alarm learns to stay permanently switched on. It becomes faster, louder, more sensitive. At the same time, another part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, responsible for planning, patience, and long-term decisions, gets pushed into the back seat. Neuroscientists describe this as the brain being hijacked. When survival feels uncertain, the mind stops investing in the distant future and focuses on tonight, this bill, this immediate problem. Psychologists call the result the scarcity mindset, a kind of tunnel vision. Imagine trying to think about college savings while your body is convinced the house might disappear. The brain makes a brutal trade. It sacrifices long-term strategy for short-term safety. This is why many adults who grew up poor are unfairly labelled as impulsive or irresponsible. It isn't a lack of intelligence, it is a nervous system shaped by cortisol, by years of watching adults worry, by what researchers of childhood adversity call toxic stress. Studies on adverse childhood experiences show that chronic financial strain can influence attention, memory, even the way the body processes emotions. The child learns, don't dream too far, don't relax too long, don't expect stability. And here is the painful paradox. The very adaptations that once kept you safe can later become invisible cages. Even when the paycheck becomes steady, the brain may still react as if the ground is fragile. Your reactions are not proof that you're broken. They are proof that you survived something real. Poverty doesn't only change the brain, it changes childhood itself. Some children grow up measuring time by birthdays and summers. Others grow up measuring it by due dates, rent, electricity, the next paycheck. They learn adult vocabulary before they learn how to be children. Interest rates, overtime, late fees. This is called parentification, when a child quietly becomes a co-parent. You may have listened to your mother's worries instead of telling her your own. You may have learned to read the room like a weather forecast, checking if it was safe to ask for new shoes, or if today was a don't add another burden kind of day. Needs became dangerous. Wanting felt selfish. So you learned a powerful sentence, I can handle it myself. That sentence helped you survive. It also built a wall inside you. Many adults from poor homes develop hyper-independence, a reflex to do everything alone. Asking for help can feel like standing on a stage without clothes. Receiving care can feel heavier than giving it. And beneath this strength lives a quiet grief. The childhood you were never allowed to have. The afternoons you spent worrying instead of playing. The times you stayed silent because your family already carried too much. You were not born serious. You became serious to protect people you loved. Understanding this doesn't make you weak. It explains why rest feels uncomfortable, why you struggle to let others carry you, why being cared for can feel like losing control. A part of you is still that careful child, standing in the hallway, listening for problems before they arrive. There is a difference between guilt and shame. Guilt says, I did something wrong. Shame whispers, I am something wrong. Children who grow up poor often inhale shame the way other children inhale confidence. It arrives in small ordinary moments. The worn sneakers on picture day, the address you hesitate to share, the free lunch card slid across a cafeteria table. No one has to say the words. You learn them without language. You begin to believe that poverty is not something that happened to you, but something you are. Even when life improves, when the degree is framed on the wall, when the paychecks finally feel steady, that old belief can follow you into brighter rooms. This is the heart of imposter syndrome. You sit in offices with glass windows and wonder if someone will notice you don't belong. Compliments feel like mistakes. Success feels temporary, borrowed, fragile. Many adults become experts at class passing, changing their accent, their clothes, the stories they tell about childhood. Not to lie, but to survive socially. Yet inside, a quiet translator is always working, converting abundance into anxiety. One careless comment about your spending, a joke about trailer parks, a raised eyebrow at the way you tip, and the floor of your confidence can disappear. The shame is older than the moment. It belongs to the child who learned to feel small before they learned to feel seen. You didn't just feel poor, you felt wrong. Naming this matters, because what you call a personality flaw is often a memory wearing new clothes. Trauma rarely speaks directly. With money, it often speaks in opposites. Some survivors of poverty become hoarders of safety. Even with a stable salary, spending can feel like bleeding. You keep the cracked mug, the shoes with thin soles, the phone with a dying battery, because throwing things away feels like tempting fate. The bank account becomes a fortress you're afraid to leave. This isn't wisdom, it is memory. Your body still remembers empty weeks, and it believes comfort is dangerous. Saving is no longer a choice, it is a ritual to calm an old fear. Others move to the opposite pole, the revenge spender. When money arrives, it must be used now, before life steals it back. A new jacket, an expensive dinner, gifts for everyone you love. For a moment you can prove to the world and to that younger version of you, I am not poor anymore. Behavioral economists call this delay discounting. The future feels less real than the present, but beneath the science is a child who learned that money was temporary, that joy had an expiration date. Both extremes are built from the same root, a nervous system that never trusted stability. You might notice triggers, tax refunds that disappear in a weekend, Black Friday carts filled with things you don't need, physical tension when a bill arrives even if you can pay it. This is what therapists describe as financial PTSD, the past living inside today's transactions. Neither version is crazy. Neither is weak. They're different languages of the same story. I must protect myself from losing everything again. Understanding which language you speak is the first step to changing the conversation. Poverty doesn't stay inside the wallet. It quietly moves into the way we love. For many, early instability teaches a confusing equation. Love equals anxiety. If childhood felt unpredictable, calm can feel suspicious in adulthood. You may find yourself drawn to chaotic partners, not because they're healthy, but because they feel familiar. Peace can feel like a language you never learned. Some choose the opposite path, the low-maintenance relationship. You look for someone who asks for little, who won't question your background, who won't notice the parts of you still afraid. Safety becomes more important than joy. You settle for being accepted instead of being truly seen. Scarcity also shapes how we give. You might overfunction in relationships, paying for dinners you can't afford, solving everyone's problems, proving your worth through usefulness. Asking for support can feel humiliating, like admitting you are that child again. And rejection hits differently. A casual comment about your spending, your manners, your hometown can wake a very old wound. The body reacts before the mind understands. Defensiveness, silence, sudden distance, these are not overreactions. They are protective reflexes. Many adults carry a secret fear. If they really knew where I came from, would they still choose me? Love becomes a test you never agreed to take. But the truth is this: your attachment style was written in circumstances you did not design. What feels like personal failure is often the echo of an environment that taught you to guard your heart before it taught you to open it. It would be dishonest to speak only about the wounds. Poverty also forges qualities that money cannot easily buy. Many survivors develop an unusual crisis competence. When others panic, you become clear. You know how to stretch a dollar, how to improvise dinner from almost nothing, how to keep going when plans collapse. Chaos does not intimidate you. It feels like familiar weather. There is often a deep, quiet empathy as well. Having stood on the fragile side of life, you recognize the invisible struggles of strangers, the tired cashier, the neighbor working 2 jobs, the friend who pretends everything is fine. You see people, not resumes. You may carry a strong sense of resourcefulness, fixing before replacing, valuing substance over appearance, understanding the real cost of comfort. These are not small skills. They are forms of intelligence the world rarely names. But this is not an attempt to romanticize poverty. Pain is not a gift. What deserves honor is what you built despite the pain. Resilience, loyalty, the ability to find light in narrow places. The goal is not to erase these strengths, only to free them from fear, so they can serve your life instead of guarding it. The most hopeful truth about the brain is this: it is plastic. What poverty shaped can also be reshaped. Healing begins with a simple, radical shift in language. Instead of saying, "I'm bad with money," try, "I learned these habits to survive." This reframes your story from failure to adaptation. You are not repairing a broken person, you are updating an old survival program. Next is the hardest boundary, separating net worth from self-worth. Practice saying it out loud. My value does not rise with my bank account, and it does not fall with a bill. Repeat it until the sentence feels less like a theory and more like oxygen. Your nervous system also needs new experiences of safety. Start small. At a cafe, choose the higher quality coffee without justifying it. Replace the worn shoes. Throw away the broken toaster. These are not luxuries, they are messages to your body. We are safe enough to let go. Therapists call this an exposure ladder. Gentle steps that teach the brain abundance through action. When panic appears, standing at a checkout line, opening a medical statement, pause and practice somatic grounding. Feel your feet, slow your breath, speak to the child inside. We are not in danger anymore. If possible, seek spaces designed for this work. Financial therapy, trauma-informed counselling, community groups where money stories can be spoken without shame. Healing grows faster in company. And learn new skills without punishment, a compassionate budget, automatic savings that feel like protection instead of prison, boundaries with family guilt that drains your future. None of this happens overnight. You are not trying to become a different person. You are teaching your body to live in the present instead of the past. For a long time, your life may have been organized around one question. How do I survive the next thing? Bills, expectations, memories, each one felt like a test you couldn't fail. But survival is not meant to be a permanent address. You're allowed to move from guarding your life to actually living it. To spend without apologizing to ghosts from the past. To rest without proving you earned the right. To believe that stability can be real, not a trick waiting to collapse. The child who learned to be careful deserves more than caution. They deserve joy, softness, and ordinary days that do not feel like emergencies. If this story felt familiar, you are not alone. Millions carry these invisible scars, and speaking them out loud is the first crack in the wall of shame. I'd love to hear your experience. What habits did poverty leave in your life? Share your thoughts in the comments so others can feel seen too. And if conversations like this help you understand your inner world, consider subscribing to the channel. We talk here about the quiet parts of the human heart, trauma, healing, and the paths back to ourselves. You survived something real. Now you get to do something braver. You get to live. Thank you for watching.